I guess you guys should ask some questions. People have asked me, why did I do this? And it's because I was just filled with emotion of my mother and father passing. I just really, my mother was like a force of nature. She was the air I breathed. She was my best friend. And just she's gone. And we were left with all these artifacts, documents, and stuff around the house. The house we lived in was built by slaves. And so I wanted to save all the fabric and things, and I wanted to incorporate it into either a collection of African American history artifacts, books, manuscripts, and then I just started quilting and painting, and I hadn't painted since I was 17. So 7 years ago, I started quilting and painting again, like I did in high school. It just happened. And it was just filled with emotion, and I was just depressed, went through therapy, and it was the only thing that helped me just sort of survive the trauma of losing someone that meant so much to me. We've all been there, right? And we all know it's like, and we all have those holy spirits of those people who have left us behind, and boy, I'm lonely. So a lot of this stuff that you're seeing, the emotion in it is, I'm lonely, I'm lost. And one of the things my mother said to me was, Avis, no one's ever going to remember me. And I said, yes, they are. She said, please remember me. So I have a collection of African American artifacts, documents of slave ships. I wanted to know who I was. I'm an economist, so I collected slave ship documents just to sort of document how we got here, how I got here. I'm part Native American, not only Indian. So I have that stuff, and I have, my white history is the Chambers family, so, and the Hamlin family, who was vice president during Lincoln. So all this stuff was going on, and I just stopped everything that I was doing, and the only thing that mattered to me was documenting my history and culture. And so that's what I did. So this quilt is made out of an old quilt top that sort of has like linsey woolsey and silk pieces from the I guess 1800s, maybe a little sooner. And I just kept my son's blue jeans and Eugene's blue jeans and Dad's blue jeans and just started putting them into the quilts and wrapping that workmen around that quilt, because it's like, this is how they saved the fabric from that period, from the 1800s, and this is how it's like early 1900s. And then this was the way they saved work people's clothes today. So I wanted to save that. And this was really hard to do, even though it's so simple, because it has it's really hard to go through like 6 or 7 layers of routine. So I break about 14 or 20 needles on one of these quilts. But I want, in my art, I wanted to make you feel the person, to feel so I leave the ragged edges on it. And so that's what this quilt's all about. This Slaves in the Field of Cotton is the third painting that I had ever made. Once they put my Lincoln, that was the first one, without the glitter. And the Lincoln was my second one. Someone saw my Obama picture and said, can you do Lincoln? And so my painting of Lincoln, they commissioned me, the Ford Theater, to paint Lincoln. Paid me $15,000. And it's in the lobby of the Ford Theater. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm a Harvard economist. So I said, oh, what am I going to do? I got to figure out whether I can really paint or not. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to paint a big painting with women in it, and I'm going to paint a big painting with men in it. So with 15. So this was my third challenge, was whether I really was a portrait artist or not. Because here it is in the Ford Theater with Jack, Lincoln got shot at, and I didn't know what to do. So I made myself at 6 in the field of cotton. I just wanted to see, well, what would I look like in a field of cotton? And so that's who that is. That's me. And people always think, well, why didn't you paint him the master? And it's because he's unknown. People never really take ownership of being slave owners. And so I have these documents, and when I look up someone's name, they always say they're an abolitionist, but then I have the documents that say they own slaves. So that sort of annoys me, so I just said, okay, well, he's the unknown. But I used burlap, and I used broadcloth underneath, and it was just really difficult to make, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but that's what this is, and that's what this means to me. And I did Barack, President Obama, I just wanted to make him into a rock star, so that was just being silly. I just think he's hilarious, and he's black and he's white, so I didn't make him any color. I made him all colors. And he's just, and he always has that shit-eating grin on his face. It's like, so I never thought any of this stuff would ever be seen. And I just thought it was just really funny to make him into sort of this glittery rock star person with blue jeans and using the same old fabrics and stuff. And it's really a joke. It really is. But Kendrick's is not a joke. Kendrick's did it about a month ago. And I just wanted to do some musicians and how would, all these portrait artists know how to do, they know how to do jazz singers and stuff. I said, well, what would I do? Well, I'm ex-hippie, and I love Purple Haze. So I started painting Hendrix, and I started thinking of his mother. And I said, I'm not going to paint him goofy. I'm not going to paint him like, I wanted to paint him as Mrs. Hendrix's son, and this tragic figure of who was a genius as a guitarist. But I cried. Most of paintings, if it's not good, if I don't cry, it's not good. So I cried on this because I felt that this was Mrs. Hendrix's son. And he was famous, and he got caught up in it, and he was used, and he used them, and they used it, and everybody was used, and he's gone. So that's what the look in his eye is. It's sort of this tragic Mrs. Hendrix's son. And then I decided to be Avis. I love fabric. My grandmother was a tailor, and that's how she survived, so I had to know how to make my wedding gown and everything else. So I just took this fabric, and I love dressing people. I love dressing up people in my paintings. And I just think that this is hilarious. The band of gypsies and that period when men were wearing everything, including Eugene with the scarf around his head and the scarf around his knee and the blue jeans. So that's what this is all about. And I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun painting this painting, and it always surprises me. The hair. People have asked me about the hair. Well, it was a bouffant. He had an afro in the beginning, and then he straightened his hair, and he put it on rollers, and so I used to have my hair like that. So it was really easy for me to do that hair, and the whole thing with me on art is just trying. I paint thinking I don't give a shit. I don't care what anybody thinks about this. How I feel, and usually when I work that way, it comes out exactly how I want, and you can hopefully feel the emotion in it. But I'm really happy with that painting. I like that painting a lot. This quote was, I just wanted to do a rewrite. I work with the Jeesman quilters. Mency Petway is my mentor. She's from Wilcox County, Alabama. I started working with the Jeesman quilters when they were the Freedom Quilting Bee in the 1970s. Prior to that, in the 60s, Martin Luther King went to Wilcox County and noticed that these women were sharecroppers and they made these quilts. So they made this building. Sears gave them corduroy to make the purses and the chairs that we all used during the 60s. And they used the leftover corduroy to make quilts. And so when I sent them my classic, Pennsylvania Dutch quilt. They just said, what is this? And I said, would you quilt it? And the stitches were really big. And I do really fine, you know, you're shooting for 12 stitches an inch, 10 stitches an inch. And I got my quilt back and I said, what the heck? What is this? And I'm an economist, I'm working in the budget office, and I'm going, what did they do my quilt? And they helped me to, they're the ones who taught me about color and using contrast. And so that's one of the first ones that I did. And I just gave up and started doing everything and just used fabric, corduroy and blue jeans, no normal cotton stuff. I just wanted to use what's left, and it was very perfect because I had leftover stuff from my parents' house. My mom, you know, the draperies or my father's pants or the jacket I had on, and silks, and my mother and father, they had all the stuff left over, and so I just decided to put upholstery fabric in here. And I thought the crushed velvet is just hysterical. I know, we all had crushed velvet in the early 70s. My father's pants, Mr. Robinson's jackets. They're all gone, but they're still in here. And this quilt is called Motherless Child, and this is how I felt. So I quilted this, I did this patchwork, sent it to G's bin, that way quilted it, hand quilted for me, and then I put myself, a black woman in here, as feeling like the motherless child. I finally understood what it was like to be a motherless child. This is made out of silk. There's a pair of pants. And so it's like this motherless child, whether you're, you know, someone's been put on a boat and on a ship to go to Africa or me or anybody else. And I'm just always surprised at the reaction of people on this quilt. I've seen grown men cry over this quilt. And I'm just really glad that people feel that quilt. I love it. I do. And I don't really even know whether I can even do any of this stuff ever again. It just comes out and
Can I ask a question about your process?
Yeah.
Do you kind of have an image in your mind as to what you want the quilt to look like, or do you work out on a piece of paper, you know, all the darks at the bottom here and the light up at the top? I mean, or do you just start out and hope that it'll work?
Most of the time, you know, I cut the strips and I lay them out and take a look at what I see, and then I put it together. And in this particular one, I knew I wanted it to be dark. I have another book called Piano Keys. It's about my father, and it's like Jitterbug. It starts black and blues, and then it turns into deep reds and burgundies and then mellows, and it has rhythm. And it's all about, you know, tap dancing and jazz and all that stuff. So this is a remnant of that. I wanted to see if I could make piano keys using old remnant fabric. And then when I saw it, I said, well, that looks like the ground and the strips. And I think, but that's how it happens. This one, Sharecropper's Masterpiece, I wanted to see, that's classic G's bin. And that one over at the end is classic. And I've worked with him for a long time, but I wanted to break away and see who I am. And I had all these strips, and I just challenged myself to see if I could put those fat pieces together, those teeny strips together, and what would happen, just thinking about the colors. And I love this in here, the reds and reds. And you never think that reds and reds would actually be beautiful, but it is, I like it. So I like this. And this cool one of the top contemporary art designs of 2009. I was stunned. So that's what that one's all about. Just challenging myself and challenging to see if I can get this to lay flat. It's not easy to have curves to lay flat because the fabric wants it to go like that. So a lot of people take it for granted that quilt lays flat like that. It's not easy to do. So that's what that quilt is all about. And so, do I plan it? I don't draw it out. I just take the fabric and I take a look at what I have, and then I challenge myself. And then I start sewing and doing the contrast and seeing if it pops. And if it pops, I'm on the right track. If it doesn't, I usually ask my son who's 20, he's 23, and now I would say, what do you think, Lowell? He goes, eh. If Lowell likes it, it's okay. So, and this one is, this was a bear. I know Sharon Malone. She's a doctor. Her sister Vivian was integrated at University of Alabama, and Sharon was 7 years old when this happened, so she had no idea what was going on. And her husband is, Eric Holder, who was assistant attorney general, so he had that job. And now he's attorney general, so it was just all weird. And this is my childhood. It's everything, and it was really hard because I was doing this for Sharon. This is the only time I hate it. Commissions suck. So, but I felt really pressured because it was his sister. And Vivian worked at EPA. I had finished Harvard, got to EPA, and she was working in civil rights, and I became like one of the first African Americans to be a deputy office director for an economy and environment. It was huge, and never even met Vivian, and she's gone. And I'm talking to Sharon, I was, wait a minute, she was there at EPA, wait a minute. She helped me without even me knowing it, and it was just really very one of those aha moments. So it was difficult for me to paint her because she meant so much to me. They grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and so I have a collection of artifacts. I have slave collars, all the things in here I own. And so this is Frederick Merriman, who is a runaway slave bill, 1816. This is a slave collar, one of the only ones I know in existence that have curls in it. This is a slave ship shackle with a large collar for the mother's neck and a small collar for the baby's wrist. Whips. I have the postcards that I used to give out during lynchings. This one's from Alabama of two men, and they were hung because they got in the way of the hanging of another Negro man. So it's like, so I buried that deep into this to have people to remember that but for slavery, we wouldn't be in this position of having to deal with desegregation. And people just forget how this all happened. So I just wanted her walking over African American history literally into hell because she was putting her life on the line. And I just love putting fabric into my quilts, into my paint. I like to paint on my quilts and put my quilts in my paint. They're just falling to pieces, and I'll put it in there. And so that's what I did here. This was really a challenge, but Wallace came easy. And this painting made me real nervous because I didn't know how people, I'm having them literally coming out of hell. And so I just said, well, people might not like this, but what the hell? So it's coming out of hell. And there's just a lot going on in this painting. A lot going on. The white protesters, the black, and what was going on in the NAACP, the reporters. I'm trying to have a woman reporter and a black reporter and showing diversity coming into the country. So this was really hard, and this is one of the few paintings it's never been in my house to live with, so it was hard. And I used my grandmother's old silk, my mother's old lace. My grandmother used to make these kinds of suits, so I knew exactly what clothing she was wearing. I even know the pattern she used to make. And this quilt is, I just wanted to do something, I just wanted to do something that was moving. So I love this paint. I love this. This is Sharecropper's Nightmare, so that's this. Any questions?
Is that supposed to be like 3D?
Yeah.
It looks like.
Yeah. And the challenge was to take 4 blocks, cut them in 4, and put them back together. So it was hard. It was very tricky to do. It looks so easy, but it's really tricky to do. And the fabric's really hard to work with. contrast, and I quilt like, I paint like I quilt. I use fabric as like paint, and when I paint, if you look at my paintings, I have strips of color, and that's basically how I paint. I paint with strips of color, like if you look at, especially Obama and Hendrix, there's strips of color, and so that's just how I do it. I definitely paint like a quilt, and try to do the paint quilts like. So, and then all the rest of it is just historical. I just wanted to people remember that he built America. African American men, they did it. You know, they built the Capitol Lake. We did it, and I have the documents with all of what we did. So I really like to paint back then, and in a respectful way. And I really had fun with this quilt and putting the shirt on it and suspenders on it. And I wanted it to have movement. And I did think this through. I wanted to have, the quilt wasn't as important as he is. And I wanted it to have texture and corduroy here. And I want people to look at my art and want to touch it. I want to unbutton the shirt. In the pockets of the jeans, you can put your hands down in the pockets and things. So I want you to feel really, they make it really hard for people not to be able to want to touch it. And I love Fred. Fred's great. He's all dressed up with his 1860s tie. And I love him. And this was an experiment with orange, green, and purple. I wanted to see if I could make an African American man in the color browns. If you mix all those three colors together, you get the color. So he was mixed race, so I wanted to make his image using those colors without using brown. And this is Grandma's flower garden, all leftover fabric from my mom's house. And, you know, this is the draperies that we had in our house. And I just couldn't throw it away. So I just put it in the Union soldier. It's okay. I have pictures of the various types of black soldiers, and I just wanted to do a painting of a black soldier holding a flag, a Union soldier. This one, I have documents of James DeWolf, who's a large slave trader in Rhode Island. And yeah, so when I was making this quilt and I wanted to name it, I named it Slaves and Sharks in the Water, because James DeWolf threw over a little girl over. I have the court documents from 1785. He threw this little girl over board of the ship, and it was the first trial. The crew refused to do it, so he did it. And the crew went back to Rhode Island and filed suit against him for murder. And it really, really fired up the abolitionist movement. And so I just did this quilt in memory of that little girl that was thrown overboard. He ended up coming back. They had a trial in St. John's in the 1790s. He went back to Rhode Island and became a congressman for Rhode Island. But he built the rum factory, the first rum factory in Rhode Island. And most people, when they think of slavery, they always think of the South. And little do they know that, you know, the DeWolf family, James brought the slaves over. His brother was in Cuba, they cured them there, and the other brother was Charles DeWolf, who was in Charleston. That's how you got Charleston. But, and so I never really understood the Civil War and why they were talking about families fighting each other. Well, the DeWolf family was fighting each other. I mean, you had Charles in Charleston, who wanted to keep this plantation, and James and, you know, the rest of the crew up there wanting to do Civil War. So that's what happens is these families from the North divided up the chore of slavery and the slave trade and tobacco and whatever. And so when the Civil War happened, whoever relative was in the South was fighting relative. And that I didn't, you know, so that's the documents. And all my documents are linked to John Howard. Y'all know I love the orange lipstick. I was just being funny. I never thought it would be in a gallon. And I just think she's, you know, when I was in University of Maryland, I mean, she was just like a goddess. I wanted an afro like hers. And, but I think she's hysterical. And then she's next to Harriet Tubman, who's not hysterical. They're both tough women, different periods, same thing. And Harriet Tubman always wore a heavy wool coat on the Underground Railroad, and I just took my father's old clothes and just put it on Harriet Tubman and wrapped her head in an old quilt top that was falling to pieces up in there. And so that's her. She was tough. She was a tough woman. So that's why I do what I do. I probably have about 100 quilts and about 100 paintings, and that's what I do.